Tonight, 10 graduate students from across the university are being brave and taking on the challenge of presenting their dissertation or thesis in just 3 minutes. But before the fun begins, I would like to introduce the Dean of the Graduate School, Dr. Willie Prado, to say a few welcoming remarks.
Thank you, Tiffany. Good evening, everybody. I don't like podiums. I don't do well behind podiums. I'd like to welcome everybody to the 3MT competition. Thank you to our judges, to all the faculty, staff, but most importantly, thank you to our 10 courageous students. Despite the fact that we have judges here, I promise we are not judging you. You are going to do fantastic. In our eyes, you're all winners. Thank you so much for doing this. We are looking forward to you really taking your dissertation research. I'm sure you're probably a little bit tired by now, and you're going to speak about it for 3 minutes. So we're very excited that you're all to do this, and we're very excited that we're here in person this year. So for those of us that have participated, have witnessed this event for 6 years now, I think we all agree that the event wasn't quite the same via Zoom, even though it was nonetheless a lovely event. I'd like to introduce our judges. Of course, we have our repeat judge that continues to come back because he really does say that this is the best event at the University of Miami. Our Provost and Executive Vice President for Academic Affairs, Dr. Jeff Dirk. Second, our trustee and president of the UM Alumni Association, Evangelist Side. Next is the Dean of our School of Architecture, Rudy Alcuri. And last but certainly not least, Kelly Miller, our Associate Dean for And I'd just like to acknowledge all the graduate school staff. Thank you so much for all your help. Obviously, you are the ones that make this happen. And I'd also like to thank the GSA, the president of the GSA here, one of our competitors. Thank you so much for all of your support and for all you do to make the event happen. Thank you. Enjoy the event.
And now I would like to welcome the Associate Dean of the Graduate School, Professor Patricia Brown.
Hi everyone, welcome to the University of Miami's 3MT competition. It's a great pleasure to be here today. Like many of you, we at the grad school look forward to this day with a lot of excitement and anticipation. As we come back in person for our university's 6th 3MT, it's worth taking a minute to reflect on how 3MT developed and its significance, particularly today. It all started with a drought, a shower, and a very innovative dean. The idea for 3MT came about at a time when the state of Queensland in Australia was suffering from severe drought. To conserve water, residents were encouraged to limit their showers to 3 minutes. The dean of the graduate school at Queensland, Dr. Alan Lawson, had an epiphany. He realized that you could distill the essential elements of a dissertation or thesis in the shower in 3 minutes. He put 2 and 2 together, and the idea for the 3MT competition was formed. The first 3MT was held at the University of Queensland in 2008 with 160 PhD students, and today the competitions are held in 85 countries and at 900 universities across the globe. So the 3MT has not only endured the test of time and geography, but also with the technological disruptions of the pandemic era, it's proven to be a worthy pedagogical exercise and one that certainly helps students in the workplace. The importance of being able to call attention to, distill, and clearly communicate complex ideas just gets more important every year as the amount of information we encounter increases in scope, speed, and volume. I'd like to acknowledge the 10 graduate students who are going to present their work here today. The problems they seek to solve are timely and important. They're wonderfully diverse in terms of their backgrounds, their disciplines, their areas of research, but one thing they have in common, they're all incredibly brave. We could not be more proud that they're all representatives of the University of Miami. Our competitors haven't gotten here alone. We would like to acknowledge their advisors, mentors, department faculty and staff, their schools, peers, family and friends, loved ones, many of whom are here today. They have all been there helping them to this point. Our good colleagues and friends across UM have helped them to prepare as well. I'd like to acknowledge the University of Miami Writing Center, the Topple Career Center, and the library's Creative Studio. We also want to give a special thanks to our co-sponsors, the Graduate Student Association. It would not be a competition without rules. So, now for the rules, which are uniform throughout all 3MT competitions worldwide. First, presentations are limited to a maximum of 3 minutes. Competitors exceeding 3 minutes are automatically disqualified. The timers to the side of the stage will count down to the start and will indicate the time elapsed. Presentations are considered to have commenced when the presenter starts their presentation through movement or speech. Participants may use a single static PowerPoint slide with no animations or movement. No additional electronic media, such as sound or video, are permitted. No props are allowed. No costumes, musical instruments, models, etc. We all play a part in their success, so we ask the audience to minimize any and all disruptions during the talks. Please silence your cell phones or anything that might beep, buzz, or otherwise disrupt. And if you must talk or get up, please do so in the brief time allotted, about 90 seconds, between each talk, so as not to distract our participants. So with that, I pass it on to Dr. Clanton, who will kick us off, and good luck to all of you.
Ready? Ready. Let's go. Our first competitor is Morgan Gianola, a PhD student in psychology in the College of Arts and Sciences. The title of his dissertation is Idiomatics, Assessing the Neurobiological Relationships Between Language Processing, Cultural Context, and Pain Among Spanish-English Bilinguals. His advisor is Elizabeth Lowson.
When you stub your toe, do you say ow or ike? If you're bilingual, your answer likely depends on the language that you feel a stronger connection to, even if it's not the language that you were just speaking. This is a simple example of your pain affecting your language use. My research focuses on the reverse relationship of how the language that we use can affect our experience of pain. This idea that the language that we use can alter the way we perceive the world is known as linguistic relativity. The literature on this topic, as well as well-documented disparities in pain treatment and assessment across Hispanic populations, led me to this research topic. I study this by having Spanish-English bilinguals come into our lab, complete surveys about their cultural identity, and receive painful heat stimulations on their arm, which they rate in different ways. Importantly, they do all of these procedures during an English-speaking session and separately during an identical Spanish session. I've found that whether a participant rates their pain higher in English or in Spanish can be predicted by their cultural orientation. That is, whether they identify more strongly with the Hispanic or the US American side of their culture. So on the graph here, the x-axis represents this measure of cultural orientation, while the y-axis is showing participants' pain intensity ratings. As you can see, more Hispanic-oriented participants showed higher pain intensity ratings in Spanish, while more US American-oriented participants showed higher intensity in English. Overall, bilinguals tended to show greater pain in the language associated with their stronger cultural orientation. Because this was an fMRI scanning study, I've been able to investigate the brain processes of this language pain relationship. I've been looking at those brain regions that modulate their pain-evoked activity across languages in line with participants' cultural orientation. Interestingly, I found that areas involved in the sensory aspects of pain, circled here in green, as well as those that contribute to the emotional processing of pain in purple, are showing greater pain-evoked activity in the language of a bilingual's stronger cultural orientation. This seems to imply that those participants rating the pain differently across languages really are feeling stronger pain in the language of their stronger cultural orientation, even though the stimulations themselves are exactly the same. So could these findings be applied in clinical or healthcare settings? Perhaps language variables could be used to develop tactics for more efficient and accurate pain assessment tools and combat disparities in pain treatment by developing culturally sensitive treatment approaches in Hispanic populations.
Our next competitor is Bryce Smith, a master's student in musicology in the Frost School of Music. The title of his thesis is Freestyle Soundscapes, an acoustomology of freestyle skateboarding contests. His advisor is Gabrielle Cornish.
Imagine standing in or skateboarding around a skate park and think about all the sounds you may hear. Regardless of your experiences with skateboarding, you're likely imagining a cacophonous soundscape of smacking sounds as skateboards and skateboarders slam against the terrain and obstacles. In my research, I examined the skate park as having a sonic logic, that is, the sonic patterns generated by skate park users' performances. And this sonic logic is informed by what I term as the skate park spatial logic, or the prescribed ways in which skateboarders navigate the space. For instance, as shown in this image of a skate park in Paderborn, Germany, there are two ramps situated at each end of the dotted green arrow. And as skaters glide down one of these ramps, they are confronted with obstacles situated in the direction of travel, thereby ensuring that the skater can move from one obstacle to the next as efficiently and conveniently as possible. As skaters engage with these obstacles, they generate several short bursts of smacking and grinding sounds that may index a particular trick performed, the obstacle performed on, and whether the attempt was successful. By contrast, the gap between obstacles are merely traversed by skaters en route to obstacles rather than sites where maneuvers are performed, and therefore constitute areas where the sounds of wheels gliding across the terrain are produced. Each summer, however, freestyle skateboarders, referred to as simply freestylers, gather at this German skate park to compete in the Paderborn barbecue skateboarding contest as shown in this image, and as I argue, perform in ways that contest the skate park's spatial and sonic logic. These solid arrows, as well as the orange oval, reflect the unprescribed ways in which freestylers navigated the space. Unlike skate park's typical users, freestylers performed in the gaps between obstacles rather than obstacle to obstacle, and also skated in the margins of the skate park itself. By performing at these sites, freestylers replace the sounds of wheels gliding across the terrain, typically produced at these sites, with sonic patterns like a smack, smack, smack generated by the wheels and edges of the skateboard repeatedly hitting the terrain, scraping sounds generated by the underside and top side of the skateboard sliding against the asphalt, and tearing sounds produced by the edges of the wheels gliding across the terrain during certain wheelies. And spectators, too, temporarily activated this skate park's sonic and spatial logics by sitting on the obstacles, denying skaters from engaging with and sonifying the structures. Indeed, since there are no purpose-built skate spaces or purpose-built freestyle skate spaces in the same way there are skate parks for disciplines of skateboarding that require obstacles, my findings illuminate that freestylers and the disciplined spectators must reinvent spaces both sonically and spatially to negotiate their presence within them.
higher education leadership in the School of Education and Human Development. The title of his dissertation is Religiosity and Student Outcomes. His advisors are Soyeon An and Carol Ann Fiku.
So, religion in higher education, not a very controversial topic at all. So, as you can see from this chart behind me, there's been a change in the religiosity of the US population across the generations. If we start over at your left, in the silent generation, there was about a 90-10 split between religious people and religiously unaffiliated people. And as we move down the generations to the millennials, the split is 60-40. What we mean by unaffiliated is atheists, agnostics, and people who are spiritual but not part of an affiliated, not affiliated to a religion. The other effect of this change in the population is that most of the research has always been focused on religious students. And so a big gap has opened with the non-religious students. My research is a quantitative research based on an existing data set from the Higher Education Research Institute at UCLA. It has about 18,000 students from some 300 different institutions across the United States. So what is the outcome of the research? In of 50 variables that I analyzed, 45 of them, the non-religious students had worse outcomes. For example, when we talk about campus climate, we can see there that the non-religious students rated their campus climate as less friendly, less inclusive, less tolerant, and less caring. So this presents an opportunity. We have a population here that we can address that can help us raise the levels of satisfaction and engagement of all our population. That's good for our ratings, right? We can help us raise that. The other important thing here is raising awareness. There's very little awareness about this, and so thank you, 3MT, for the opportunity to raise a bit of awareness on that. What can we do in practice? So one of the things we can do is when we have interfaith dialogues, we can include non-religious students. Maybe we have a non-religious chaplain to include in that group. Another thing we can do is be purposeful about including non-religious students in the diversity, equity, and inclusion programs of our institutions. And finally, and I know it's a little bit self-serving, but more research. There's a big gap there, and we have to find a way to fill it. So thank you very much.
The next competitor is Lynn Williamson, a PhD student in marine biology and ecology from the Rosenstiel School of Marine and Atmospheric Science. The title of her dissertation is Testing Strategies to Enhance Climate Resilience in Caribbean Coral Juveniles for Reef Restoration. Her advisor is Andrew Baker.
Think of an animal that impacts your life every day. You might think of the dog or cat you share your home with, the cows whose meat or dairy you consume, or the bees that help our crops and gardens grow. Chances are you're not thinking about corals. But just offshore, Florida has the world's third largest coral reef. So for residents here, and for 500 million people around the world, corals are integral to our way of life. Corals are ecosystem engineers, building reefs that provide habitat for the seafood we eat, produce ingredients for medicines, protect our beaches and coastal properties from flooding and erosion, support tourism and recreation, and hold immense cultural value. Sadly, in the past few decades, we've lost half the world's reefs and the critical ecosystem services they once provided. Climate change is the primary culprit. Healthy corals depend on tiny algae that live in their tissues and help them survive and grow. But extreme marine heat waves trigger a process called bleaching, where corals lose their algae, causing starvation and death if they don't get them back. If coral reefs are to survive climate change, interventions are urgently needed to help them take the heat. One way corals might adapt to warming oceans is by changing which algae they host. Previous studies have found that a type of algae called Durastinium allows some corals to avoid bleaching and withstand heat waves. With my PhD, I tested a scalable way to deliver these heat-tolerant Durastinium algae to lots of corals by doing so very early in life. Baby corals are being bred for reef restoration efforts here in Florida and worldwide. They're very small, so we can work with hundreds at once, and most are not born with algae of their own. So I asked, can we increase the heat tolerance of baby corals by giving them Durastinium algae? And does this approach scale for reef restoration? To answer this, I reared several endangered species, including elkhorn, brain, and star corals, and provided them with different types of algae sourced from both adult coral colonies and laboratory-grown cultures. During their first few months of life, I seeded thousands of baby corals with Durastinium algae and found that most formed healthy, stable partnerships. Importantly, baby corals hosting Durastinium algae survive twice as long under high temperature as those hosting other types of algae. My research shows that in the face of rapidly warming oceans, actively seeding baby corals with Durastinium algae before planting them out onto the reef can help boost their heat tolerance. Every single baby coral that survives on the reef and avoids bleaching will help add brand new genetic diversity and climate resilience to coral populations that so badly need it, enabling reefs to continue sustaining coastal communities like ours into the future. Thank you.
Our next competitor is Nadia Pierabian, a PhD student in biochemistry and molecular biology at the Miller School of Medicine. The title of her dissertation is Opioid Antagonist Nanoparticles as Therapeutics for Stroke. Her advisor is Sylvia Donnert.
Since 2017, the U.S. Department of Health has declared the opioid epidemic a public health emergency. Prescription opioids such as morphine and oxycodone have been the gold standards for acute and chronic pain treatment since the 1980s. As a result, cases of opioid abuse, addiction, as well as opioid-related brain damages, namely ischemic strokes, have become highly prevalent. Ischemic strokes account for almost 90% of all strokes and occur when there's an obstruction in the blood vessel, such as a blood clot, and fresh blood can no longer reach the brain. During an ischemic stroke, the affected area suffers stress and inflammation that challenges the integrity of a critical fence between the blood and the brain, named the blood-brain barrier. With stroke as the fifth leading cause of death in the U.S., current treatment options are limited to only one FDA-approved drug, known as tissue plasminogen activator, or TPA. TPA works by breaking up the blood clot to restore blood flow, however has no apparent protective effects towards the damaged blood-brain barrier. Since there's an evident need for new drug developments to improve stroke outcomes, for my thesis, I decided to adapt existing drugs, specifically opioid antagonists, into new drug forms and test them for stroke recovery. Opioid antagonists are a family of drugs conventionally used to rescue and treat opioid overdose patients. They are attractive therapeutic options for stroke due to their anti-inflammatory properties and potential minimization of blood-brain barrier disruptions. To date, I have successfully made new drug forms of these opioid antagonists using a method that maintains their innate therapeutic properties, but simply makes the drugs very small and uniform in size for effective brain delivery. Due to their very small, microscopic sizes, my new drug forms are called nanodrugs, or nanoparticles. I have tested my opioid antagonist nanoparticles in brain cells and in full animals like mice. In cultures of cells, the nanoparticles protected the structural proteins, or backbones, of the blood-brain barrier. In mice, the nanoparticles reduced stroke severity. As treatments for stroke have remained the same in these past decades, formulating and use of opioid antagonist nanoparticles for stroke offers a novel paradigm shift that I hope brings us one step closer to my goal, to improve the lives of stroke patients. Thank you.
is Mert Akeem, a PhD student in mechanical engineering in the College of Engineering. The title of his dissertation is Making Lithium Production Cheaper, Faster, and Greener. His advisor is Shanyang Zhou.
Lithium is the holy grail for batteries, your electric vehicles, iPhone in your pockets, your smartwatches. The demand for lithium has been greater than ever before. In fact, lithium prices increased by nearly 5 times in the past year. For the first time in the history, the demand for lithium exceeded its production worldwide. Unfortunately, we have a problem with lithium production. Conventional way of producing lithium is expensive, extremely time-consuming, and inefficient. But more importantly, this process is not environmentally friendly. It consumes a tremendous amount of fresh water. You can imagine the capacity of the pool right behind me of fresh water is consumed for every ton of lithium. And this, unfortunately, poses an enormous burden on the environment. When it comes to lithium production in the United States, it's not a success story either. The US produces only 1% of the global lithium despite the domestic demand. And as a result, the US is one of the biggest lithium importers in the world. My research seeks to alleviate both environmental issues and foreign lithium dependency of the United States. We develop an economical and environmentally friendly solution to produce lithium from domestic brines, or in other words, salt lakes. Our process offers a direct lithium extraction to electrochemical routes with 3 innovative features. First, our electrochemical reactor has a flow-through configuration that maximizes the capture of lithium water. And secondly, we develop thick, highly conductive and permeable electrodes that minimize the number of layers in the reactor and thereby reduce the material cost. And lastly, the combination of ion capture and ion exclusion reaction in the process maximizes the cost efficiency. So far, our estimations show that compared to the conventional process, we could reduce the final lithium carbonate cost by a factor of 5, shorten the processing time from 18 months to below 2 hours, and increase the process efficiency of 90%. But on top of that, we can save a tremendous amount of fresh water to this innovative solution. And this can significantly reduce the impact of lithium production on nature. With this project, as the University of Miami, we attended the American-made geothermal lithium extraction competition organized by the Department of Energy. And the good news, our project was selected as semi-finalists among 200 competitors worldwide. We believe that this technology holds a great promise for the next generation lithium extraction from domestic salt lakes. This eventually can provide a sustainable and environmentally friendly domestic lithium supply to the US. Thank you for your attention.
The next competitor is Samina Sheikh Wu, a PhD student in nursing science in the School of Nursing and Health Studies. The title of her dissertation is The Effect of Positive Psychology on Symptoms and Quality of Life Among Acute Colorectal Cancer Survivors. Her advisor is Charles Downs.
Colorectal cancer, cancer of the digestive tract, colon, or rectum. Why is this important? You're probably thinking this has nothing to do with me. It's an older person's disease, someone over the age of 65. Sadly, that's wrong. Colorectal cancer is the 4th common cancer for both men and women, and it's on the rise among younger adults. People are getting diagnosed in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. But with medical care advancements, the odds of overcoming cancer has increased. People are living longer. Yet survivors continue to report adverse symptoms, pain, fatigue, anxiety, to incontinence, ultimately reducing their quality of life. We need to figure out ways to help improve symptoms to improve quality of life overall. In recent years, positive psychology, a focus on how individuals self-regulate and cognitively cope in response to a traumatic event like cancer, has shown to improve quality of life by providing an optimistic outlook to one's mind. Yet little is known regarding positive psychology and its effects on symptoms and quality of life among this colorectal cancer population. I conducted a cross-sectional study of 117 colorectal cancer survivors to examine the relationships between symptoms, positive psychology, and quality of life. Participants completed questionnaires, descriptive statistics, and multiple linear regressions were performed. Over half of the sample were Caucasian, non-Hispanic males with stage 4 colon cancer undergoing chemotherapy with a mean age of 55. The most common symptoms were numbness in the hands and feet, skin changes, sleep disturbances, generalized weakness, and fatigue. I found that over 75% of the sample reported moderate to high positive psychology, suggesting that they are coping to their diagnosis. Also, positive psychology showed to decrease with increasing age. Survivors in their 20s reported the highest levels of positive psychology. On a positive note, quality of life was reported as high. Pretty much survivors felt that their quality of life was important and that they were satisfied with it. I found that there were significant relationships between positive psychology symptoms and quality of life. Survivors that reported higher positive psychology significantly reported higher quality of life, less frequent, and fewer numbers of symptoms. So in case you or someone else you know gets diagnosed with colorectal cancer, please be mindful there are new and upcoming ways to manage symptoms, improve quality of life through positive psychology.
The next competitor is Claudio Rizzo, a PhD student in business at the Miami Herbert Business School. The title of his dissertation is Essays in Finance and Climate Change. His advisor is Alok Kumar.
What is nature worth? I mean, what is its monetary value? When a large storm hits South Florida, coastal mangrove forests act as a buffer and prevent part of the flood damage. Across the United States, nature is able to mitigate the strength of extreme weather events, from droughts to hurricanes. The mitigating role of nature becomes even more important during this era of climate change, which brings stronger and more frequent natural disasters. My research centers on the value of nature for local economies and financial markets. In particular, I study municipal bonds rates. In fact, I study counties that destroy nature see an increase in municipal bonds interest rates. This increase in rates has major economic implications. First, the borrowing cost of counties increases and resulting in a decrease in local government's investment. In addition, bonds utilized to fund infrastructure projects see an increase, suffer the most from this increase in rates. This suggests that that destroying nature decreases the let me take it back. Sorry about that. This causes a decrease in local government investment. To clarify why rates increase, I study weather damages before and after nature loss. I find that counties that destroy nature experience greater weather damages even though it doesn't sound like, but my study has some strong policy implications. Supporting nature conservationism as a economic strategy. I find that my study relates the importance of nature conservation for local economies as well as the macroeconomy, financial markets, as well as the fight against climate change. Thank you, and I apologize.
The next competitor is Joan Brown, a master's student in Global Health and Society in the College of Arts and Sciences. The title of her thesis is, Ethnicity Has No Effect on the Mortality of Prostate Cancer in Black Men Living in Broward County, Florida. Her advisor is Herns Marcelin.
This is a picture of 3 generations of my family. My husband, Grandpa in yellow, the grandchildren and their dad. At about 10 years or so, the grandchildren have children of their own. Grandpa will be well into his 70s, and if he continues to eat right and exercise, this will be a photo of 4 generations. But if it was only that easy for Black men to stay healthy, the fact is, men like Grandpa are more frequently diagnosed with prostate cancer, the second most commonly occurring cancer in men. Why? Well, there are a few established risks. Increasing age, being Black, and some genetic conditions. Grandpa automatically has 2 of these risks. And research tells us that he and other Black men like him in the U.S. and the Caribbean are sicker when they're diagnosed with prostate cancer, and then have the highest documented rates of death associated with it in the entire world. The reasons for this are unclear and not explained by biology, race, or genetics. Therefore, in my research, I examined societal and cultural factors that contribute to this disparity in 3 South Florida counties: Broward, Palm Beach, and Miami-Dade. The unique makeup of this tri-county area, where there are a lot of Black men that were born in the U.S. or the Caribbean, allows me to examine the increased rate of death these men experience in ways that are not possible in other communities. My study of U.S. Census and Florida health data show that men in Broward and Palm Beach die from prostate cancer almost twice as often as white men. And shockingly, in Miami-Dade, Black men die from prostate cancer more than twice as often as white men. My results also suggest these rates are likely being driven by men born in the U.S., more so than those born in the Caribbean. So what is the societal and cultural connection? Chronic stress. Over time, Black men born in the U.S. experience high rates of exposure to stressors such as structural and explicit racism, leading to chronic stress. Chronic stress accelerates aging, prostate cancer is a disease of age. My research highlights the need for additional studies of prostate cancer risks. Studies that will provide the information needed to develop culturally astute approaches to screening and prevention with the goal of reducing the prostate cancer disparity in our South Florida counties for generations to come.
The final competitor is Nadia Pierabian, a PhD student in civil engineering in the College of Engineering. The title of her dissertation is Splicing FRP Reinforcement in Concrete Structures. Her advisor is Antonio Nani.
You've probably heard that the collapse of a concrete bridge or a concrete building might be due to the steel corrosion, such as surfside topping. The corrosion of steel reinforcement in concrete structures can reduce the service life of the structure. There are many efforts to mitigate the corrosion, but unfortunately, these efforts are not successful in humid environments such as Florida. So, instead of the mitigation, why not eliminate the problem? The solution is simple. The solution is replacing the steel reinforcement with FRP bars in concrete structures. FRP bars are composite reinforcement consisting of a fiber and resin, and they've been used for more than 40 years in different concrete members. FRP bars offer many advantages. First, they are non-metallic reinforcement, so we do not have corrosion anymore. Second, they are stronger than the steel. FRP bars have higher tensile strength than the steel. And finally, they are cheaper than the steel. So, they have different material properties, but of course, new material introduces new challenges. FRP bars are brittle material, like glass, so they cannot be bent in the construction field. This poses significant challenges when a FRP bar must be connected or spliced to another bar on construction site. There are different methods for splicing FRP bars, but traditional methods are not practical for FRP bars. One of the methods for splicing bars is to use a mechanical coupler or a splice to connect two bars together and make the continuous reinforcement. Unfortunately, now in the market, there isn't any effective mechanical couplers for splicing FRP bars. So, my reservation focuses on two types of the mechanical couplers to investigate the behavior of the spliced FRP bars. A series of experimental tests have been done on spliced FRP bars, and also the final element model was developed and calibrated experimental results identify the proper mechanical couplers for splicing FRP bars. I believe the outcome of my research can be one of the knowledge gaps on composite reinforcement, and the results will be a game changer in concrete construction. Thank you.
We will let our judges finish up their scoring sheets, but please join me in giving a round of applause to all of our amazing competitors. Well done. Also, for the audience, it is time to vote for the People's Choice Award. So please pull out your phones, go to menti.com, type the code that you see here on the slide. You may vote only once. So please go ahead. Competitors, you are allowed to vote, so you may vote. And then I invite everyone to move to the back of the room for past hors d'oeuvres, beverages, network, talk with the competitors, and we will be tallying all of the scores, and then we will reconvene in 20 to 30 minutes to present our winners. Thank you, everyone. So we thank her for the support of our competitors. We also would like to acknowledge the Writing Center. Joanna Johnson, would you please come up? Thank you, Joanna, for supporting our students and helping them prepare for the competition. And lastly, we would like to acknowledge the Topple Career Center. Carly Smith was here, but she did have another obligation and had to leave early, so we'll make sure to get her contributor gift basket. Okay, so now for the fun. We're going to start with the People's Choice Award. This is a $350 monetary prize, and the People's Choice Award goes to Lynn Williamson. So Lynn, you can come on up. Okay, so our runner-up. Our runner-up is Joan. That is also for a $350 monetary prize. the 2022 3MT competition is Lynn Williamson. Lynn will receive a $750 monetary prize. Lynn also will get to take the trophy with her. So here's the trophy. We will engrave it for her, and it's going back to Rasmus. So please, all of our competitors, if you could come to the front, we do want to get photos with everyone, okay? And then the rest of you, please, continue to network and enjoy. Thank you, everyone.